If I were involved in something like that, Charlemagne, I grew up with a dad, just as you're raising your own children. I would have been more afraid of my father than I would about the cops catching me. These kids are afraid of neither. They don't have a father in the home. Cops are demoralized. They're pulling back. Their manpower is short. And as a result, you tell a bad guy you're less likely to be caught, convicted, incarcerated, crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. Mm-hmm.
Hey family, welcome back to another episode of Journey to Harmony. I'm your host, Richard Harmon. Today we want to talk to you about Larry Elder's visit to the Breakfast Club. So Larry Elder is a Republican candidate who is currently in the process of running for president of the United States. He's had a chance to go and to visit with the Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club has become famous as kind of like a gateway to the Black community for the most part. It's ran by Charlemagne the God, DJ Envy, as well as Teslin on there. So what I'm doing, I'm going to go ahead and play a clip here. We'll come back and talk about that, and we'll go from there.
What are the reasons, if your statistics are right, what are the reasons that you think fathers aren't in the home?
As I said, it's because in the mid-'60s, Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. And Charlemagne, literally, they sent social workers door to door in the inner city. I remember this, advising women of the availability of welfare provided there was no man in the house. It created an economic incentive for women to marry the government. Same thing with whites. In 1965, 8% of whites entered the world without a father in the home married to the mother. Now it's about 25%, also up threefold. Look at census data, 1910, 1920, 1930, in places like Milwaukee, Chicago, Philadelphia. A young Black kid was slightly more likely to be brought into a world with a father in the home married to the mother than a young white kid. We have incentivized this kind of bad behavior, and it's had a disproportionately bad effect on the Black community.
Let me ask you a question. What do white people do wrong, Larry Elder?
What do you mean, what do white people do? I'm not worried about white people. I'm worried about what's going on with us.
But if there's systemic racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is. I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe there's
No, there used to be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is in America.
Oh, man, there's so many.
Just give me the most important one you think.
At the top of mind, I'd probably maybe say mass incarceration. Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression, when 50% of Black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's the breakdown of the family.
I'm not going to. I agree with the family part. I'm a Black man who is a father to his children, and I'm a happily married Black man to a Black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part. But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and Black people do that. And when I ask you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking.
All right, perfect. So we see there that there was some good back and forth between the different commentators. Larry Elder has some good points. Charlemagne has some good points. I think overall, for the most part, what I saw in this conversation is that when you watch the whole video and not just little clips, the Charlemagne, DJ Envy, and Teslin all had decent points. Larry Elder held himself very well once again, stating some facts. But I think what's happening right now is that Republican candidates feels like they're going into these interviews as kind of like already defensive, and for good reason, right? So the many Democratic leaning different sections have not been great in terms of their coverage and their questioning. But on this particular part, I felt like Larry Elder was going in more as a candidate rather than someone who was listening to hear what the host had to say and willing to give his perspective on different things. So
I think there's a cause and effect, but if we can't talk about the cause, which I believe is systemic racism and white supremacy, the FBI said.
Well, I just told you, if it's systemic racism, please explain to me how it was when America really had systemic racism in 1940. 87% of Blacks lived under the poverty line. Again, this is during Jim Crow era. My father is from Athens, Georgia, grew up in Jim Crow. My mom is from Huntsville, Alabama, grew up in Jim Crow. 87% of Blacks live below the poverty line. This is before Brown versus Board of Education. You did not find these kind of Black on Black crime.
Probably because we had no choice.
But they still were living below the poverty line, though, sir.
I'm sorry?
You're forgetting the fact that they were still living below the poverty line. You're picking and choosing, saying this was good, but this was bad.
Okay.
The bottom line, they end between the poverty line. But let's move forward.
Can I just address that? In 1940, 87% of Blacks lived under the poverty line. 1960, that number had fallen to 47%. That's a 40-point drop in 20 years. That's the greatest 20-year period of economic expansion for black people in the history of America. Again, well before Brown versus Board of Education, well before the KKK imploded, well before we had race-based preferences. Why? Because it was rare for a black kid to be raised in a family without a father in the home, a strong belief in Judeo-Christian values, a belief in patriotism, even as America wasn't applying these values to black people, obviously, and a belief in entrepreneurship. All those things are now under assault by organizations like Black Lives Matter. Charlemagne, Black Lives Matter had on their website an attack on the nuclear family. The founders are self-described Marxists, trained Marxists. Marx wanted to dethrone God, was an atheist, and Marx did not believe in capitalism, let alone entrepreneurship. All the things that made black people still survive in virulent racism are now under attack by organizations like Black Lives Matter.
All of those things have always been under attack by white supremacy. You can go back to things like whether it's the Tulsa race massacres, like every time black people do create these systems that are our systems and we are the entrepreneurs, it seems like white supremacy finds a way to destroy it.
Every time, look, the Tulsa massacre, within about 5 years, that whole area was rebuilt. It was not even called the Black Wall Street until after it was rebuilt. And it was rebuilt, by the way, by black people without one dime of government money.
Yeah, but who destroyed it to begin with?
He had many valid points about how the black community isn't doing great and doing their part overall. You know, we're not providing households that are with fathers. But Teslin, Charlemagne the God, also had some valid points as well, is that going from a place where there's only 25% of the black population that has no fathers back in the 60s to where it's 75% now, there was something that happened that was implemented that caused that breakage that happened. And one side is trying to point to that, another side is pointing to the overall effort of today. And the truth is somewhere in the middle. So I didn't think it was right or wrong on any particular side, but there were some great points. I don't really expect Larry Elder to be able to overtake Trump or Vivek Ramaswamy or DeSantis, but it's good for him to have his point in there. But I think overall, what I got from this more is that we need to go in, right? So I think Teslin on this was a whole lot better than she was on the Ramaswamy interview. And there was parts of it where it looked like she was trying to extend an olive branch, where she was like, I agree with you on the family concept. I agree with you in certain things. But, you know, it didn't, it felt like, you know, Larry Elder had already made up his mind on what he thought of her prior to the interview. And it was kind of just like kind of whatever. So, yeah, it was very entertaining. I think every time we see this, it's generally going to be something of a meme for the internet. But more than anything else, what I took from this is just that we need to listen to other people. I may disagree with your opinion. I may think that you politically are not in the right space, but I still need to hear from you. A broken clock is right twice a day. And we as a people, we need to be able to hear what someone else is saying and not just come down with our own opinions and decide who they are before we even talk to them. What are your thoughts on this? Please comment below, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining. Have a good day.